Hello, I'm Jenny Lamorgan with Lean Into Green, and I'm excited that you've joined us today. We have as our guest Beth Terry. She's here to teach us all about living a more plastic-free life. Before we get into talking more about who Beth is, I wanted to just give you a little summary of why we're here. I'm a green entrepreneur and owner of greenwomanstore.com, and I want to learn and share more about going green and how it enriches our lives, and also to just to get more of a grasp on how the wholeness of going green and how it affects us personally and politically and spiritually and environmentally. So, and to deepen our relationship with the earth and the way that we understand and experience going green. So I'm here to welcome Beth Terry today. She is a blogger and an author, and you may know her blog, My Plastic Free Life. She educates us on how to live without generating plastic waste and gives us cool, free innovations and much more about living more plastic free. Thank you, Beth, for being with us and for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Jenny.
Thank you for all the work that you do educating us about steps that we can take and ways that we can certainly benefit the environment by using less plastic in our life. I think it's a really important piece of going green and definitely a place where we can all begin. So can you tell us a little bit about how you began and what motivated you to begin living a plastic-free life?
Sure. Well, I've been doing this for about 6 years now, but I didn't start out as someone whose life was, quote, green, or I wasn't reducing plastic 6 years ago. In fact, I was the kind of person that would request double plastic bags at the grocery store, and I was living on frozen microwavable meals in plastic trays and convenience foods, energy bars in plastic wrappers, and drinking bottled water and throwing the bottles in the trash and not really thinking about what I was purchasing, where it came from, where it was going to go, until one night when I was browsing the computer and I stumbled across an article about the plastic pollution problem in the ocean. 6 years ago, I had never heard anything about ocean plastic pollution, and I saw a photo that shocked me. It was a dead albatross chick. An albatross is a bird that lives on Midway Island, which is halfway between the United States and Japan, thousands and thousands of miles from civilization. And this bird was completely full of everyday plastic pieces like bottle caps and things that I was using on an everyday basis. And what I learned is that the mother birds fly out across the ocean to gather food for their chicks, and they're mistaking plastic for food, and they're bringing it back and feeding it to their babies. And reading that just utterly broke my heart, and I thought, I've got to do something about this. And as I read further, I learned that it's not just animals that are eating plastic, but we humans are also ingesting the chemicals from plastics and feeding it to our babies when we feed them from containers that are made out of plastic or feed them foods that are packaged in plastic. There are lots of chemicals in plastics that we don't even necessarily know about that we're ingesting. And so I decided to see if it would be possible to live without acquiring any new plastic. And I didn't know if it was possible. I didn't even think I would do it for very long. I figured I'd probably just do it for a month and then see what my plastic footprint was and then move on to something else, because that's the way my life had tended to be at that point. And so I set up a bag under my kitchen table to collect all my plastic waste, and I made a website, and I'm actually an accountant for a living, so I made a spreadsheet so I could track all my plastic waste.
Very good.
And I didn't tell my husband that he had to do any of this, because it was just my project, and I just wanted to see how it would go. But I did, like I said, make a blog and start spamming all my friends and family with the information. And it's been over 6 years now, and my blog has this huge following, and I've written a book, which I never intended to do when I started this, and it's just completely changed my life and given me a purpose. So that's my story.
Well, it's a wonderful beginning, and I think that the marine life has inspired so many people to use less plastic. We have on Green Woman Store, we have a woman, Amy Ferguson. She works and volunteers for a marine preserve in Florida, and she became aware of the issue with the marine life, and she's created now reusable produce bags, so that, and I love them. I use them. My daughters use them. We just, they're kind of multi-purpose. But so I think, when you talk about innovations, there's so many alternatives now and answers to plastic. And also, I'm an aromatherapist, and so I'm really aware of buying body products in plastic, because everything that we absorb through our skin goes, into all of our organs, and it's like you said, the chemicals in the plastic, we're ingesting them, we're absorbing them too. So
that's right. That's right.
So you've done a lot of research. You've got that kind of analytical mind.
I do. I have an accountant's brain, I think. But I did, I took it step by step. I did get really, really involved and start doing a ton of research. And I was, at the time that I started this, I was actually at home recuperating from surgery. So I was off from work, and I had all this time to just dive in and start doing research. And I only work 3 days a week, so I have extra time to devote to this. And what I realized after doing it for a few years was that the hardest part of living without plastic, and I'm talking about, getting rid of the plastic in the bathroom, the plastic shampoo bottles and deodorant containers, and like all kinds of things that people wouldn't necessarily think about at first. That the hardest part of that was doing the research, and I fortunately had enough time to do it. And so that was why a few years later I decided to write my book, Plastic Free, to give people sort of the guide that I wish that I had when I was first starting out, and to take away that research component so they could just get started without having to go on the internet and figure out, okay, what do I do for toothpaste? What do I do for a toothbrush? How do I get soda if I really like to drink soda? Things like that. I had figured out a lot of that stuff and could provide that information.
That's wonderful. What are some of the first steps that we can take to reducing plastics in our life? What's a good place to start?
Well, first of all, I like to tell people that it's not one size fits all, because everybody's lifestyle is different. What's really easy for me might be very challenging for somebody else. My first step for me was to decide to not accept any more plastic shopping bags from stores, whether that was grocery stores, pharmacies, department stores, wherever, and to always have one or more reusable bags with me at all times. And I don't have a car, so a lot of people just put a bunch of reusable bags in their car, and the hardest part is remembering to bring them into the store with them, or to take them from their house back out to the car. For me, because I don't have a car, I had to find a way to always have bags with me every single time I left the house, no matter where I was going. And so I discovered Chico bags, which are they're technically plastic because they're made from polyester, although you can get some that are made from recycled polyester. But the beautiful thing about them is they stuff up into a little stuff sack that could fit in the palm of your hand. And if you carry several of them in your purse with you, then you're never, ever without a reusable bag. So I made that exception, even though they are, like I said, technically plastic, because I figured they would save so many other plastic bags. But there were a couple times when I had to either do without something because I didn't have a bag with me, or carry it out in my hands. Or one time when my husband and I were on vacation, we ended up carrying out produce from a store rolled up in our shirts because we had forgotten our bags.
Very good. Well, that's a good place to start, I think, by reducing them right there at the grocery store counter.
Yeah, so that was the first step for me, and then the second step for me was to cut out. Sorry, let me just get a drink. the second step for me was to cut out the bottled water, because I was, getting a new bottle of water every time I went to the gym and throwing the bottle in the trash because the gym didn't have a recycle bin. And so I just got a clean canteen, which is a stainless steel water bottle, and just started getting in the habit of bringing that with me wherever I went. And if I forgot to have a bottle with me, it was a learning process that I wouldn't die if I didn't have water immediately. I could wait a little bit to get a drink, which it seems like the bottled water industry has done a lot to convince people that we have to drink all the time. We always have to have water with us. We have to stay hydrated. They've put lots and lots of money. And yeah, it's important to stay hydrated, but I think it's even more important to realize that we can wait for things. We can bring our reusable bottle with us. We don't have to have something immediately as soon as we think we need it. So that was a learning experience too.
Well, thank you for noticing that. I think that's true. I see a lot of marketing about hydration, and it's always linked to some kind of packaged bottled water. So what about if we have pets? I know that's just an area that's really difficult to eliminate plastics. What have you come across for that, to reduce plastics?
Well, we have 2 cats, and so and we didn't have the cats when I first started this project, so that was something that I had to really research, because I knew they were going to need some things that were plastic. For example, they have cat litter boxes, and those are made out of plastic. But what I do when it comes to things that are durable and things that I think that I need that will be made out of plastic is, instead of going out to the store and buying them new, I look for them secondhand, because that's at least reducing the need for new virgin plastic to be produced. So we looked on Craigslist and FreeCycle and went to thrift stores, and that's how we found their carrier boxes and their litter boxes. And I've heard that cats will not use a litter box that another cat has used, but we didn't find that to be the case at all. We just cleaned them out really well, and our cats didn't have any problem with it. And then in terms of the litter itself, we found a brand called Sweet Scoop, which is made from wheat, and it comes in a paper bag instead of a plastic bag. Because, one of the issues is not just the product itself, but also the packaging. So both of those. And then to feed them, instead of using cat food that comes in plastic bags or even cans, because, cans are lined with plastic. They have bisphenol A in them. We found a recipe online and started making homemade cat food for them. My husband actually takes a stainless steel bucket to the butcher shop and gets meat and brings it home and mixes up this recipe that we have. And the only plastic involved is the plastic bottle of supplement powder that we put in the recipe. But other than that, it feels pretty good to feed them whole foods and to know what is actually in their food. So that's an added benefit of this. Another thing when it comes to pets is what to do, how to pick up the waste, especially if people have dogs and they have to go out. And so there's a whole section in my book about things that people can use to pick up and dispose of pet waste and garbage and things like that instead. One woman even told me that she has a little dog, and she told me she uses pages from the yellow pages to pick up her dog poop. So there's all sorts of things people do.
Those yellow pages that we all toss into the recycling bin without giving them a second look.
Yeah.
All right. That's very good. Wow. And so what are some of the things that we can do just around the house? I mean, I know we've started like packing lunches in containers that are not plastic. They have really nice stainless steel ones now. And we even have, going back to the good old days of wax paper baggies for sandwiches and that kind of thing. So I'm seeing a lot of new products out on the store shelves now that are available for us to get some of the plastic out of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that I love to promote is ways that people can actually save money without necessarily having to go out and buy new things. Because you're right, there are some great stainless steel containers, glass containers, all sorts of alternatives. There are cloth sandwich bags and snack bags and things that you can buy. But another great alternative, if you don't want to spend a lot of money, is reusing glass jars. And our cupboard is just full of glass mason jars that we use for foods from the bulk bins, snacks and rice and flours and beans and all sorts of things in the cupboard. Our refrigerator is full of glass jars for leftovers and all sorts of things that have to be refrigerated. And even our freezer is full of glass jars. And the key to freezing foods in glass in the freezer without having breakage is to not fill them up past where the neck starts to narrow, and so that leaves room for expansion. And if you do that, and if you don't subject glass to extreme temperature differences, don't take it out of the freezer and stick it in the microwave, or take it out of or stick it under hot water or whatever, then it won't break. And we have yet to have a glass jar break from being frozen. So that's one thing that I love, one thing you can do in your house. And, in my book I also have a list of questions to ask yourself to decide what your priorities should be in terms of replacing plastic with non-plastic items in the house, because you can't do it all at once. And it's taken me years to get to the point where I am, and I still end up with little bits of plastic here and there. And so it's important to, first of all, not get overwhelmed, not beat yourself up because you're not perfect, but just take it step by step and make a plan and figure out, do you have children? Maybe replacing the things that the children are using would be your number one priority, or replacing the more toxic plastics like PVC and things with bisphenol A would be more of a priority. There's different questions you can ask yourself.
Yeah, I know that if you just stop and take a look at the amount of plastic in children's lives these days, it's really overwhelming.
Yeah.
Even if you're not heating their baby bottles in the microwave,
Yeah.
there's so much plastic in their lives. So
yeah. Well, and I'm really lucky because a large portion of my readership is parents. And so when I was writing the book, I gathered tips from the readers of my blog and sprinkled them all through the book. And so in the section about children and families, I have tons and tons of tips from other people, because I personally don't have kids myself. I have cats. But I have tips from moms all through the book about how to feed children, what to use instead of plastic-coated utensils or plastic dishes, plastic plates, things that moms do, how to talk to them about toys and what to do when other people try to give them plastic toys, and just various ideas like that, because it can be overwhelming and challenging when you have kids.
Well, that sounds helpful. So what are some ways that, if we've taken some of these first steps, we've started on the journey of reducing plastic in our lives, and what are some ways that, kind of some second, third level ways that we can lean in a little deeper for your life?
So some of the things that are surprising to people are all the ways that you can reduce plastic in your bathroom. If you look at your medicine cabinet, you will usually find toothpaste in a plastic tube, a plastic toothbrush, deodorant in a plastic container, lotions and creams, and shampoo and conditioner in plastic bottles, all sorts of things in plastic in the bathroom. And I have found plastic-free replacements for almost all of them. I have a bamboo toothbrush, and
wow.
I actually found a little product called Toothy Tabs, which are made by a company called Lush, and they're these little tablets that come in a cardboard box that you use instead of toothpaste, and you crush them between your teeth, and they foam up, and they actually make toothpaste in your mouth. So that was neat. But I have lots of recipes in the book for different ways to make your own toothpaste. My favorite discovery when it comes to deodorant is using baking soda instead of commercial deodorant. And I just add a few drops of tea tree oil to it, which is antifungal and antimicrobial, and makes it smell good. And I have to say, baking soda deodorant works better for me than any commercial deodorant I've ever tried. I mean, in terms of cutting odor. I mean, like, there's no odor at all. But it does. Everybody's body chemistry is different. Some people find baking soda to be a little bit irritating. So I have lots of recipes for different ways to make deodorant in my book too. Some people add coconut oil. Some people add cornstarch. There's all sorts of different things that you can do. Hair washing, there are shampoo bars and conditioner bars that you can get, which are just like a bar of soap, but they're actually shampoo. And you rub them on your hair like you would soap, but they foam up. And then there's another method of hair washing called no poo, which is where you actually wash with a solution of baking soda and water and rinse with a solution of apple cider vinegar and water. And for me, that actually works better than shampoo bars or any kind of shampoo. But, you know, like I said, everybody's different. So there's lots and lots of different personal care and cleaning ideas that you can try just to see if they work for you and see if they can not only reduce the plastic, but also all the chemicals in a lot of those products. Because like you're saying, we put these things on our skin and we absorb them. And a lot of commercial personal care and cleaning products have chemicals that we don't want to be exposed to anyway. So simplifying the recipe and finding the ingredients without plastic is a good way to just reduce the toxins that we're exposed to on an everyday basis. Yeah.
That's great. I love some of the recipes. So your book is full of recipes as well as steps to take.
Oh yeah, there are recipes for condiments you can make. I have my friend's ketchup recipe in there. I have my favorite recipe in the book is for chocolate syrup, which is something that my husband uses every day. He actually puts chocolate syrup on his cereal, and we were using the chocolate Hershey's in the squeeze bottle, and then when we got a little more savvy, we were buying the organic version in the squeeze bottle. And now making it myself, we can avoid that plastic squeeze bottle altogether. And it's really simple ingredients from the bulk bins, and it tastes a lot better than anything that you would buy from the grocery store shelf anyway.
How difficult do you find the folks that follow you on your blog and read your book, how difficult is it for them to engage their family in plastic-free habits?
It can be challenging. That's a good question, and it's a question that I get quite a lot. Some people's families just jump in and go for it, and some people's families are more resistant. And for myself, I've discovered that the less I nag people or lecture them or tell them, well, you know, you should do this or you should do that, the less of that, and the more I just set an example through my life and my actions, the more likely they are to make changes. So, like I said, I didn't tell my husband he had to do any of this, and yet he has really made a lot of changes in his life. He's reduced a lot of plastic. He's not completely plastic-free. There are some things that he's decided are important to have, and he'll go ahead and buy them. But he thinks about it first, you know. He makes his decisions consciously. And that's really what I want, because I don't have the expectation that everybody who reads my book or everyone who reads my blog is going to reduce plastic as much as I have. I'm just trying to use myself as an example to show what's possible. And what I want is for people to consider their choices and to understand the implications of plastics, you know, the toxic chemicals that are used to produce plastics and the fact that they're not biodegradable and all the various ramifications, and then just make conscious decisions, you know. And the more you set an example for people and explain to them when they ask you, I think the easier it will be to get them to make changes than if you go, plastic is evil, plastic is bad, you shouldn't use it, why are you doing that? I know if somebody did that to me, I would just keep doing it even more probably, because I'm a little rebellious that way.
And I think we all have that in us.
Yeah.
So education is always an important component when we're wanting to change our lifestyles or our habits. So please tell us more about educate us. Tell us more about the lifetime of plastic and how that affects our waste and our environment.
Yeah. Well, I've learned a lot over the last 6 years. You know, the first thing I learned was about plastic in the ocean and animals eating plastic. But plastic is a problem from its initial birth to the end of its life, which it really doesn't have an end of life. Because, first of all, plastics are made from very toxic chemicals. They come from fossil fuels for the most part, except for some plastics that are now being made from plants. But plastics come from oil or natural gas, and then lots of toxic chemicals are added to plastics in their manufacture. There are many additives that are also added to plastics to affect their various qualities, the strength, the flexibility, the slipperiness, etc. Some of these additives we know about, like phthalates, for example, which are endocrine disruptors used to soften plastic, or bisphenol A, BPA, which is used in hard plastics and the linings of cans. But there are potentially thousands of other additives that are put into plastics to make the characteristics that the buyer wants. And we're not told what any of those things are because manufacturers are not required to disclose their proprietary recipes. So when people ask me which plastics are safe to use, I can't unreservedly tell them that any particular plastic is safe because we're not privy to knowing what chemicals are in it, and whatever chemicals are in it can leach out. So that's a problem. Plastics are a problem once they're disposed of also because, as most people know, they're not biodegradable. They last in the environment forever. They can make their way into the ocean where animals eat them. And in the ocean, plastics can release their toxic chemicals into the ocean, but they also act like a sponge, and they can absorb toxic chemicals from the surrounding seawater. And so we're finding these little tiny toxic pieces of plastic that fish are eating. Bigger fish eat those. They're ending up in food fish that we eat, so that's another way that the plastic is ending up on our dinner plates. And then plastic recycling is not necessarily the answer either, because plastic recycling doesn't address the toxicity issue, first of all. But second of all, most people are surprised to learn that in the United States and in Europe, most of our plastic recycling is shipped to China and other third world countries where the recycling itself is not happening in a very ecologically friendly manner. There was an expose done of a town in China that had become a complete toxic waste dump because of all the plastic recycling we were shipping them. And they were burning the plastic, melting it down without any protective gear. The air was being polluted. The water was being polluted. Children were crawling through piles of plastic. And not all the plastic recycling areas in China are that bad, but that's one of the biggest problems with plastic, is figuring out what to do with it. And there are companies in the United States that are developing our recycling infrastructure, but right now most of it does get shipped overseas like that. So these are just some of the various problems with plastic. And the more we can reduce the amount, especially of disposable plastic and plastics used for food, but reducing the amount of plastic that has to be produced in the first place, even if it's for things like computers and phones, by buying things secondhand instead of always buying things new, and asking ourselves, is this something that I really need or want, are really important questions to ask to reduce the amount of plastic that has to be produced in the first place.
Wow, so that's new information for me, certainly, about the recycling. You know, we think we're putting it in the recycling bin at home and sending it out, and you know, feel good about that. But
yeah, and it's surprising for most people. I have that video expose of the town in China that I show people when I give talks, and it's always really startling because I think most people feel like they put their plastic in their recycle bin and they've done their job. And most people have no idea what happens to it after it leaves their doorstep, you know.
Well, it really sounds so similar to nuclear waste. I mean, we've created these things and then with no concern at all for the end of life.
Right, which goes on. Nuclear waste is another one that goes on and on and on and on. And what do you do with it?
Right. And before we've created a solution, we've created the problem.
Right.
So, not a good way
Right.
to do business. So tell us some things about cleaning. How can we use, even if we make our own spray cleaners, using that bottle over and over and over again? That seems to be reducing plastic. But is there anything else that we can do in regards to cleaning our homes and things like that?
Well, so what we do have a plastic sprayer that we use over and over again, but the bottle itself is glass. So we buy vinegar in glass bottles and use that glass bottle over and over again. And the spray cap from a different bottle that I had fits on the glass bottle, so I just keep reusing that. And baking soda and vinegar and lemon juice, there are all sorts of things that make really great cleaners. There are recipes for using olive oil to make furniture polish, things that we don't necessarily have to buy in plastic. And I'm a little confused sometimes because there are so many green products that are being sold in plastic packaging, when a lot of things are not necessarily things that we need in the first place. I mean, reducing the different numbers of cleaners that we have is another way to reduce the plastic. Why do you need one cleaner for your countertop, another cleaner for your windows, another cleaner for your top of your stove, another cleaner for the inside of your stove, another, you know what I mean? Like there's a separate individual cleaner for every single thing in the house. And so just simplifying, our everyday cleaner is a combination of vinegar and water and a tiny bit of soap and tea tree oil mixed together, and it works really well. It works for just about everything. And then I scour with baking soda, and I scour the countertops with baking soda and then wipe them down with the vinegar solution. The vinegar solution is great for the windows. And there are other people who have more ideas about cleaning, and I reference them in the book because I have to confess that I'm not the most amazing housekeeper in the world. But I get by with the basics, and our house is pretty clean.
Well, I love what you're saying about the vinegar bottle with the spray top. I'm going to try that because the vinegar is always a pretty standard bottle.
Yeah,
for sure.
It is.
So I'm gonna.
It is, and a lot of times people don't even realize that you can get vinegar in glass bottles, but there are lots of different brands. Whether you just go for the Heinz, which is not organic, but it's less expensive and you can use it for cleaning, or for products that I might be ingesting or using on my body, I would get an organic vinegar like Spectrum or Whole Foods 365 Organics. They all come in glass bottles.
Mm-hmm. And I think, pretty much across the board, if we compare products, you're always going to find the better products are packaged in glass.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah, and it's important for like what you talked about earlier about the integration of the toxins into the product that's in it. I always wonder when a product says organic and it's in a plastic, if they tested it after it had sat in that plastic for a while.
Yeah, and I don't think they do. I don't. It's not that I don't think they do. I know they don't. It's just so ironic. It's just so ironic.
I agree. So,
and one thing that people can do, so my website and my book are full of different choices that people can make, different alternatives, but sometimes an alternative doesn't exist. And even if it does, you might have a favorite product that you just don't want to give up. And that's when it's time to write to companies and ask them to change their packaging. We just purchased a Lotus Foods rice cooker because it has a stainless steel pot, and we didn't want to cook out of aluminum or nonstick surfaces. And so we switched it out. It was one of the very few times that we actually bought something new. And I was shocked when I got home and opened the box, and there was a huge chunk of styrofoam right at the top of the box. Styrofoam is number 6 plastic, which is very toxic. It's got styrene in it. And then every component of the rice cooker was covered in a plastic wrapper.
Uh-huh.
And I just went, this is so ironic. Here's this product that they've made out of stainless steel because they don't want people to be eating their rice with aluminum leaching or other nonstick chemicals leaching, and yet they've got all this toxic packaging in here. So I blogged about it, and I wrote to the company, and the company actually has responded that they're going to look into alternatives. So I really hope that happens. And I've had other successes that I talk about in the book and that I've blogged about too, where I've written to a company and they have actually made a change. So our voices really do make a difference, and it is important to speak up whenever we have the time to do it.
What are some other examples of citizen actions that you've been involved in?
Well, the biggest one was back in 2008. When I hadn't even been doing this for a year, and it came time to change my Brita water filter cartridge, and I didn't know what to do with it because it's this big hunk of plastic, right? So I thought, I wonder if there's a way to recycle this. So I went online and I researched, and I discovered that in Europe, which is where Brita was originated from, the Brita company in Europe had created a take-back system so people could take their filters back to the store where they purchased them, and Brita would pick them up and take them to their facility in Germany and recycle every component. They weren't shipping them to China. They weren't making them somebody else's responsibility. They were actually doing the recycling themselves. And so I thought, well, if they can do that over there, why aren't they doing it over here? And what I learned was that Clorox had purchased the North American version of the company, and Clorox had not created a way to recycle. So without having ever started any kind of campaign, I thought, why not try it? And I blogged about it, first of all, and found out that there were lots of other Brita users that had been trying to figure out how to recycle their filters and just didn't know how. And so we made a website and a petition, an online petition, and I even opened up a mailbox down the street and asked people to mail me their used Brita filters, because I found out that Clorox, the company, is actually just a few blocks from me in Oakland, California. And so I had this vision of collecting all these filters and bringing them down to Clorox and saying, hey, and bringing the media out and saying, hey, recycle your Brita filters. And it took about 8 months. I contacted every blogger I knew. I contacted all these different environmental organizations, and I tried to learn how to write a press release and contacted the media. And we actually did get a little bit of media coverage. And when we first started the campaign, the brand manager contacted me and said, we've done focus groups, and we don't think our customers would be willing to pay more for a recyclable filter, and it's just not worth it. And so I felt like it was my job to show them that it was worth it. And in less than, I guess it was about 8 months, I got another call from the brand manager, and he said, I wanted you to know that we have developed a way to recycle Brita filters. And what they did was they partnered with a company called Preserve, which makes recycled toothbrushes and razors and things out of number 5 yogurt containers and other types of number 5 plastic. And because Brita filters are number 5, they were willing to take those as well. So you can take them back to Whole Foods, or there's an address where you can mail them. And the recycling happens in the United States. It doesn't happen overseas. And so we were pretty excited about that. And the point was that there were already lots of people writing to Brita asking about recycling, but it was a letter here, a letter there. And what we did was we made a massive push so they could see the numbers of people all at once that wanted this to happen. And it worked. So it does, and now there's a site called change.org and another site called Causes where people can make petitions, and they're having huge impacts. The internet makes it so much easier to get our voices out there, and also to let other people know what companies are doing or what we think they should be doing. So it's a great time to get companies to change.
And another example of how Europe isn't accepting the kinds of things that we are in our consumer products.
That's right. And probably one of the reasons that Brita does have the recycling system in Europe is because they have to. You know, in Europe they have extended producer responsibility, which means that the companies that make the products are responsible for figuring out how to get them recycled. And if we had more of that here, then we would have companies not only taking back and recycling things, but also probably making them with fewer different types of materials and materials that are more easy to recycle. They would redesign them so they'd be more easy to recycle in the first place.
And take more responsibility on that end, for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, how do we get more involved in the discussions on your blog? And certainly blogging is a wave of effective public action. So educate us a little bit about blogging and how we can get involved on your blog.
So my blog is at myplasticfreelife.com, and on the blog there are posts that I write about various discoveries I've made or actions or rants or new information about plastic that I've discovered. But there's also a discussion forum that you can participate in where you can ask questions or post discoveries that you've made and talk to other people. There's also the Show Your Plastic Challenge on the blog where people will collect their plastic waste for a week or more and post it on the blog, post a photo of it and describe it and answer some questions to figure out what types of things could be replaced with other plastic-free alternatives. And the nice thing about it is that other people can then comment and say, well, maybe you could try this or maybe you could try that. If you want to create a blog yourself and blog about your own plastic reduction or blog about anything, it's really, really easy to do. There's a site called Blogger, blogger.com, where you can set up a blog in about 5 minutes. It's very simple and just start. WordPress is what I use right now, but it's a little bit more complicated, and Blogger is how I started. And the more of us blogging about this, the better, I think. And so I really want to encourage people to not only try to reduce their plastic, but if you feel like blogging about it, get your voice out there and let other people know, let your friends know. Facebook and Twitter are other ways. I am on Facebook all the time because it's another way to engage with people and have conversations. And I think that there's just lots of different types of social media out there that makes it easy to connect with people and ask questions and give advice. And so it's becoming easier and easier and easier to find the solutions that we're looking for.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Beth Terry, for all the work that you've done. We have available to our listeners links to your blog, myplasticfreelife.com. We have another link to the steps to a plastic-free life, and a link to your book and combo gift pack. Can you tell us a little bit about that? You have a great video on that page.
Oh, sure. So the book, first of all, is available everywhere. You don't have to get it through my blog. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from regular bookstores. If the bookstore doesn't have it, they can order it. But if you want a signed copy, you can get that through my site. And also, I have a combo pack, which is a copy of my book and also a copy of the DVD Bag It. That film is just fantastic because it really goes through all the different issues with plastics and solutions, but in a way that is humorous and enjoyable to watch. Even though they're talking about very serious topics, there's a lot of humor in the movie too, and so that's why I really love it. And they did come and interview me a little bit in my house, so there's a cameo of my cats in the video as well. And then if you would like, you can get it in a cotton gift bag of your choosing. And the gift bag can then be used as a bulk bag or a produce bag later, and that's optional. So, and the price is pretty low for both the book and the DVD. And the DVD comes in plastic-free packaging, by the way. I mean, of course, the DVD itself is plastic, but the Bag-It folks have found a way to package it without plastic. So that was really important to me as well. And if you go to myplasticfreelife.com/book, you can learn all about the book and ways to order it.
Wonderful. And then you also have a Take the Challenge, a subscribe to your blog and Take the Challenge. So we've got a link to that as well.
Great.
So I want to thank you for being with us today and educating us. I've certainly learned a lot. And this is a journey. It's a personal journey and it's a collective one. So I hope our listeners will share some of this information with their family and friends. And I hope that we have provided a wealth of information, tips for going plastic-free, and also inspiration to just step a little deeper into going green and growing our green lifestyles. So thank you, everybody, for being with us today. Thank you, Beth Terry, and I hope you'll all keep listening.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.